Good afternoon. Welcome to this Wednesday, August 23, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Sequoia Union High School District. We are opening at this time to receive any comments on the closed session items. Do we have any people in the Zoom audience wishing to make a comment?
There are none.
Okay, having no one wishing to make a comment, we will recess to closed session and reconvene at 6 p.m. Thank you. This Wednesday, August 23, 2023 regular board meeting of the Board of Trustees of the Sequoia Union High School District. We called the meeting to order at 4 p.m. We recessed to closed session, then took a recess from closed session to attend the graduation ceremonies for the summer school graduates. And now we return to the open session. Could I have a roll call, please?
Student trustee Urgewal.
Here.
Student trustee Yuryev.
Here.
Trustee Nori.
Here.
Trustee Koo.
Here.
Trustee Dubois.
Here.
Vice President Stevenson. President Ginn.
Here.
A quorum is present.
Thank you. The next item is approval of tonight's agenda. Does anybody have any comments about tonight's agenda? Okay, do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda? Motion by Shawnee Stevenson, second by Amy Koo. Sorry, I'm forgetting. Do we do roll call vote or just show of hands on this one? All in favor of approving the agenda?
Aye.
Okay, unanimously approved. Okay, the next item is a report out on the closed session. The board took action on 2 items in closed session. The board took action to approve a retirement agreement and general release with employee number 5767032807. Employee agreed to voluntarily retire effective August 23, 2023 in exchange for a lump sum of $30,000. In closed session, the board voted in favor of this action, 5 in favor and 0 opposed. By a vote of 5 in favor and 0 opposed, the board voted to approve expulsion readmission relating to case number 2022-2023-1. That concludes the report out from the closed session. And next we have special recognitions.
Yes, tonight we have a very special recognition. Don't look at me. So I've actually had the privilege of working with this individual at a previous district. And I can say that her love of feeding children, her love of catering, and her love of adjusting menus and working with different organizations to bring down the cost of food, to bring in local food, has always been top priority for her. And throughout the years that I've actually known her, she's always dreamed of working at a district with a central kitchen. And when we had an opening, she applied and went through the process and fastly rose to the top. And I think that we all know why she did that. So I just want to read a couple of things that were shared when people were notified that we were going to recognize Sandra. So Sandra has thoughtfully constructed her team to ensure that people who feed our children are people who love our children. In fact, for some of our children, the food service workers may be the adult connection that helps them get through the day and maybe the year. Throughout the year, last year, Sandra wanted to honor her staff by providing a professional development opportunity for them so they could be recognized and feel valued for their professional contribution to their learning communities. This fall, Sandra found the money to pay for and invest in the professional development for all of our food service department. She enlisted longtime chef and motivational speaker Matthew Upton to speak with our staff about how we serve, capital SERVE, scholars. SERVE is an acronym for We Smile at Scholars. We elevate scholars. We rally for scholars. We value our scholars. We educate our scholars. Our staff were highly engaged, and immediately we knew they felt empowered and honored. And we want to thank Sandra for her thoughtful leadership. I was invited to go into that room and see everybody in action learning. And I mean, everyone was engaged and everyone was excited to be there. And we are talking central kitchen staff and then also kitchen staff at each of our sites. They were excited to welcome our students back, and they are very passionate about their craft. We are fortunate enough to also have a central kitchen that's able to cater a lot of our PD events, and staff is always so thankful for the food that our own staff is able to prepare and we are able to enjoy. And obviously, if you had the egg bites at Convocation, you know what I'm talking about. Also, Sandra looks to employ some of our students from our satellite and trace programs as well. So if you go and visit the central kitchen, you can also see our own students helping run the kitchen. So tonight, I would like to recognize Sandra Gennady.
Trustees too, come on, photo op. Okay, the next item on our agenda is public comment about items not on the agenda. Do we have any members of the public wishing to make a comment about items not on the agenda? If you're in the Zoom audience and you wish to make a comment, please raise your Zoom hand now. Okay, seeing no comments from the public on items not on the agenda, the next item is Board of Trustee correspondence, and I can report that there is no correspondence to report since the last meeting. The next item is Board of Trustees, Superintendent's comments, and committee reports. Anybody have items they'd like to share at this time? Go ahead, Shawnees.
I wanted to share that Superintendent Leach and I will be hosting a meet and greet on September 7th in East Palo Alto for families on that corridor, North Fair Oaks, Bellhaven, and East Palo Alto, for some of the leaders there, but also our parents and promising parents. And it's going to be held at Living Peace, which is on the corner of Pogus and Bay, where all of our after-school programs are. So my hope is that we'll get a great number of people. And so we'll have 2 sessions, 5 to 6, 6 to 7, to allow different parents to come. I think Tide is the only one that has a back to school. When I scheduled it, I didn't see it. And so, so parents can come to both if they want to. And then we're going to have a listening session with Ravenswood alumni from the Ravenswood High School that was closed on September 12th at Bloom House in partnership with EPA Archives. Where we're going to learn about the beauty and lessons learned of closing Ravenswood and the impacts of that. And my hope is that it also gives Superintendent Leach some historical context for that Ravenswood area, which was actually a multicultural school. So I'm excited to do that. Trustee Dubois and Trustee Koo and I, unless you guys were there, I didn't know if I couldn't see you and all the crowd, but we went to Jackie Spears Foundation for the poverty forum, how to eliminate that. And it was attended by cross sectors of people and parents and individuals. And there's an article out about it, but I think one of the things that stood out to me, I went out to a breakout session about how do we eliminate poverty. And Sequoia was recognized, not Sequoia, but our partner was recognized, Live in Peace, for the work that they're doing with swag, which I'm excited to, I think we need to hear more about that because it's seen as a promising practice to help some of the students ultimately graduate and go to college. And they highlighted one of the students will hopefully be taking an LCAT, I think it's LSAT, to go to law school, and was interning this summer in the county in the DA's office and now has gotten hired. And so I think I'm interested in that a little bit more. So I wanted to make sure that you all knew about that. And then there's two more things on your table, and I had given it to Dr. Chacon as well, that I went to, the county has contracted with 3 different organizations to do a substance abuse prevention community assessment that is designed, directed, and implemented by the individuals of that community. So one for African Americans, one for Latinos, one for Pacific Islanders. To be transparent, I worked on the one with African Americans, but Alas has worked with the one on Latinos. And so I have given you guys information on both of those. The Pacific Islander, they're on hold a little bit. They're getting their report out, but I wanted to make sure that you all had their recommendations. And a significant percentage of our students in our area actually participated in both. So as we were thinking about how to serve our communities, and I think what makes this different is because it was designed from the community by the community. And so I think it gives us some indication that community engagement can happen. But also there's some really great stuff, I think, Elizabeth, for the substance abuse prevention work that you do as well. And then the last thing, I just wanted to acknowledge Laura Carlton, who's a business owner who was fatally shot overhanging of the pride flag. And I didn't think that has impacted me quite a bit about safety. And I know that even our librarian has had some things happen with them. And so just trying to remind us of like psychological and physical safety. And so I just do a little silent prayer for her and the family, because that has rocked me. So just wanted to say those few things. So thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Safik.
Yeah, I can go next. So I don't think we've had a board meeting since this, but the entire board got to attend convocation, which is always a fun way to kick off the year. And it was great to hear people speak about what makes them excited about teaching and working here and what an exciting year we have ahead. I also wanted to share a couple updates. I know last time I talked about SB 14, which was a bill by State Senator Shannon Grove to reconsider child trafficking as a serious felony in California. So that got put in the suspense file to see if they'll still reread it. I think we also got an email from CSBA, but there's another bill, AB 1699, which if passed, I think would have serious implications for our district, especially as to how we can hire and promote classified employees. So that's something that I think CSBA is concerned about. And it would be interesting to see if it does pass, how that would affect our district. And finally, the last thing, probably most important thing I wanted to talk about was, most people are aware, but our friends down the street at El Camino, a couple of professors there have had some interesting experiences with the State Department of Education. And I think academic freedom is one of the things that we really do value, not only in our school district, but in our state and even in our country. And I think that freedom of speech is one of the principles that our country was founded on. So I was greatly disappointed to hear that the state superintendent and the State Department of Education had threatened to sue a professor at Stanford for testifying against them and say that he was in breach of their contract, and that anyone who got data from the State Department of Education, including data from our own district, could not use that data and then testify in a lawsuit brought against the district. So, I think that's Thomas D was the professor and the Gardner Center was involved. I know both of them are groups that work very closely with Sequoia Union High School District. So I was really glad to see that the state had reconsidered its position and would allow Thomas D to testify. But I think academic freedom and such an egregious violation like what happened at the state is something that's important for all of us to acknowledge, to say that we do take this seriously and we do fundamentally believe that everyone has a right to their own opinion and that your opinion won't prevent you what access to data you do and do not have. So I was glad to see that the state remedied that. But those are the main things I wanted to share.
Yeah, I wanted to echo what Trustee Nori said about convocation. That was my first ever convocation. It was very exciting. I also realized there must be secret places to park that I don't know about. But 20 minutes later, I found my way there. I did want to tell a funny story. I sent my congratulations to Eric Manning, who won the Volunteer of the Year award, and he wasn't there to receive his award. It turns out he didn't know that he won, and he wasn't invited to receive the award, but he was very grateful to receive the award after I congratulated. I think there's only one Eric Manning in Carlmont, but yeah, I think maybe because he was a parent and not a staff member, the convocation information didn't automatically go out to him. So, but that was a funny story. And then also on the 13th, on that Sunday, we had the API School Board Members Association mixer, and Trustee Stevenson was also there. It was a great time to just connect with other school board members before the school year started, and some familiar faces and some new faces. And I thought it was interesting that, people also brought up, hey, with the fires in Maui, we really ought to look at our own students and staff and check in on them to see if there are any ties to Maui, because you never know. And they might actually need some support because their friends or family are impacted. But that's something to keep in mind, and appreciate everyone getting the first day of school off to a good start. And I think we are excited for the new school year.
So I also attended the Jackie Spear Summit on Poverty. It was really an inspirational day. I just wanted to say, for those of you that weren't there, I bought you books. The keynote speaker was incredible. I left the books in my trunk, so at the end of the meeting, I'll run out and get it. But it was a very hopeful meeting. There's going to be work that's ongoing, subcommittee work on mental health, guaranteed income, and several other areas. So I am hoping to continue to be a part of that. I think it definitely ties into what we deal with in education.
Yes, we are back, and we kicked off that welcome back week with convocation. And I just want to thank all of the trustees for participating, and also thank all the trustees for sharing photos with me for my little pet project. I very much appreciate it. There was lots of chatter about your pictures, all good stuff for sure. And I just am so excited to have staff and students back and get this train continue to move in the right direction, and kind of get back to doing what we're really good at. So happy everyone is back.
Okay, thank you. We have comments now from our student trustees.
Yeah, thank you. We just kind of wanted to say we've had a great first week of school. It's definitely interesting being a senior after so many years as an underclassman and a junior. Jacob and I are currently working on getting the SAC set up with Laura, so we're just finalizing a few logistic things, and then we're going to proceed with the advertising we talked about last time to include as many students as possible. That's all from me.
Yeah, just to echo what Zahara said, we're setting up Student Advisory Council, had a good first week of school, and have already started some local recruitment for the Student Advisory Committee.
Okay, thank you. And next we have comments from the Sequoia District Teachers Association.
Hello, welcome. Little update. Neither boy made the baseball team. Everyone's very happy about it. One of them humored me for 4 days of tryouts, and then 5th day decided he didn't want to go back, and the other one went by himself that day and got a massive nosebleed and had to come home early. So we're all happy not to be playing baseball. And very happy to be back at school. The halls are bustling. We're seeing, a lot of work that's been done, just the regular everyday work that our custodial and classified staff do over the summers so that everything's ready for us to go. Normally in August, I come here and I mention the heat to you. Who knew I'd have to come and mention the humidity to you? I am lucky to teach in 2 air-conditioned classrooms, but you wouldn't know it from the clamminess in those rooms when you get 31 freshmen and me in the room. So we are looking forward to any improvements that we can make short-term and long-term, because it's really, really uncomfortable and not the greatest for learning. And it's only in the 70s and low 80s. But I wanted to tell you about a conversation I had today, because one of our new teachers came to teach his 7th period class in our room, because while it is sweaty, it's still cooler than the rooms that don't have air conditioning. And afterwards, we chatted for a while, and I discovered that he is a district graduate, having graduated from East Palo Alto Academy. And he said he was concerned about all the things that could be issues in his first weeks as a new teacher. And he never thought that heat in his classroom was going to be the issue that was the biggest one for him. And we talked about how, maybe that's not a bad thing. It means, yes, the kids are taking you seriously as an adult. And yes, you do have all the supplies you need. And lots of things that maybe weren't the case in other districts are working in this district. So thank you for that. And thank you for hiring him. He seems lovely.
Next would be any comments from the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees? Okay. The next item is approval of the consent agenda. Board action to approve the following items is taken simultaneously with one motion, which is not debatable and requires a unanimous roll call vote for passage. The action indicated on each item is deemed to have been considered in full and action taken as worded therein. Only members of the board and the superintendent may remove items from the consent agenda. Members of the public may provide comments at the start of the consent agenda item, which may convince a board member or the superintendent to remove an item for further discussion. The motion, when we have one, will be waiving the reading of the consent agenda, accepting the reports, adopting the resolutions, and approving other items. Do we have any public comment about any items on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, does any board member wish to pull any item from the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. In a second. Second by trustee Nori, roll call vote.
Student trustee Urgewal,
Yes.
student trustee Yuryev,
Yes.
trustee Nori,
Yes.
trustee Ku,
Yes.
trustee Dubois,
Yes.
vice president Stevenson,
Yes.
president Ginn.
Yes,
Motion passed.
thank you. The next item is a presentation of the Sequoia Union High School District Strategic Plan Process.
Okay, set up here. So we do have on the agenda an informational item, but also for a board discussion as we enter into creating a district strategic plan. We have a kind of rare opportunity that we are in a transition year where we have a new superintendent and we are up and coming on a brand new 3-year LCAP cycle year. So in 24-25, we will start a new LCAP 3-year plan. We are finishing up the previous LCAP in current year of 23-24. We have an expired strategic plan, and we have this rare opportunity to align all that we are doing to make sure that as we are moving forward, especially with our regulatory documents, that we have an opportunity to create actual needle mover documents. So if you've seen our LCAP, you know that it's kind of pushing probably like 100 or so pages. And it really tells the story of everything that we do. And we would like to decrease what goes in the LCAP and really put initiatives in there that focus on actual specific goals that we can actually see significant improvement for. That doesn't mean that the other things that we are working on still won't be addressed and still won't move as far as to serve students, but it just treats the LCAP slightly different. And we have this rare opportunity to do so. So I had made a recommendation to you all for the district to enter into a strategic plan for our current year. Now, the challenge with that is a shortened time frame. So as we go through this presentation and when we get to the area of the calendar, often districts can embark on a strategic plan with engagement that takes a year or more. We are condensing that to around 4.5, 5 months. And we'll be using the same engagement that we gather for the strategic plan for the LCAP for the upcoming year. So next slide. So I'm sure we are all fairly familiar with the strategic plan, but it's a management activity that is used to set priorities, focus energy and resources, and strengthen operations. So it really focuses on creating a North Star. And instead of just revising our goals, it gives us an opportunity to maybe create brand new goals that would also support and feed the LCAP. And it really just creates a focal point for all that we do in the district moving forward. Next slide. So when I look at a strategic plan, new superintendent strategic plan, it's definitely not a new concept for anyone. But I really like to look at it as an agility piece for a school district, like finding our North Star in a dynamic education landscape. So I see this plan embracing a student-centric vision, continuous learning and improvement, scenario planning for uncertainties, flexible planning horizons, collaboration and communication. It offers agile decision-making and metrics for agility and progress, and equity and inclusion always at our core. Next slide. So last year, we went into contract with Performance Fact, who is a strategic plan consultant, and they helped us with our engagement for the LCAP in trying to really migrate into a new way of thinking about the LCAP. They also have experience with strategic plans. And as we tried to migrate into a new LCAP, a strategic plan, and another plan that basically I see is like having our pillars sorted into everything that we do and how we move forward. Performance Fact seemed to fit that bill as to help us upon our journey. Next slide. So I believe last year Mutiu, I'm so sorry, I cannot pronounce his last name, was here, and I believe he spoke with the board on the process that he had used and the science behind his process around LCAPs and strategic plans. I did participate with him during the Parent Advisory Council for the superintendent as we did family community engagement around the LCAP. The response and him working with the PAC was, it was very responsive, as well with the other different councils throughout the district and parent and student communities that we gather feedback from. Next slide. So is this the updated version? Okay. So the meeting calendar for us to keep track with the timeline, this has been switched out to what has been published. So what's changed, the times are not on here. As you can see, it's a commitment for a strategic plan. It's a very large lift. I'm looking at the old one. Okay, so we have the student voice team session, and what we've done to identify who can serve on this, to start inviting them, is at camp this year. So in August, one of the activities that we did was we gave all of the school sites an opportunity to choose a certificated, a classified, a parent, a student member, so that we have representation from all school sites. And they did that for the core planning team. In addition to the core planning team, I have sent also invites to what I would consider mover and shakers throughout the district, both from our PAC and then other community organizations. We also have the instructional focus team, which has our instructional vice principals on. We have a principal team that is district leadership and principals that we will meet during principals council. We have an alignment team, we have community forums, and we also have opportunities for the board to have its own study session to provide input to the document and also have opportunities for updates throughout this process. Originally, for the core planning team, those were 4 days that were all day. And when we were recruiting for that, it definitely was proving to be a little bit difficult of a commitment. And so I went back to Performance FAC and we asked them, you know, are we able to change the times, and are we able to potentially condense them? Do we really need all day? And so from that discussion, we were able to come up with a 3 to 7 p.m. I think we also had, originally had a meeting scheduled on Yom Kippur, so that was also moved. And so there's some adjustments. There has been some invitations already set out. We have good respondents. I know that we have staff that works with our ELAC and DLAC that has done personal invitations, and people are excited currently to participate. We can, when this was published, I was getting some feedback from board members about potentially having an introduction meeting. If that is the board's desire, we could add an agenda item for the September 6th board meeting as potentially a kickoff. And we could have a presentation by Performance FAC, and the board would be able to share any concerns, desired, or potential feelings about direction on the potential output of the strategic plan. But we do have a study session scheduled on October 11th. So it would be up to the board if you would like to do something ahead of that. This recommendation for strategy and process does not have chairs, as some of us who have done strategic plans before, sometimes they have chairs. It is performance is fact recommendation that it is split up into teams. And so that everyone is participating equally within really their area of expertise as we gather information to push out. It is, if the board so desires to sit on any of these teams, we can also have you sit on any of these teams. For the core planning team, there will be at least one, if not all three. Well, I will be sitting on the core planning team, and I've also invited Dr. Chacon and Todd Bill. Bonnie Hansen will be sitting on the instructional focus team, and I will be sitting on many of these other teams as well as other district leadership. Next slide. So the student voice team, 3 to 5 students from each school. We are looking for diverse representation of the student body. Next slide. The core planning team, 3 to 4 administrators, 1 teacher, as I described. This is a very large team. It could be upwards to 40 to 60 participants. Next slide. And then we have principals and cabinet at the district administrative leadership team. In our instructional focus team, as mentioned before, 3 to 4 site administrators and instructional leaders, as well as instructional coaches and counselors throughout the district. Next slide. Our alignment team is 15 to 20 involved members of the community. So that's our partnerships, right? So our partnerships that we work with throughout the community, throughout all of the different jurisdictions that feed all of our schools. So our community-based organizations, that's what the CBOs are. And then also engagement with our feeder district superintendents and potentially also their board members, as well as our partners with the community college district. Next slide. So as mentioned earlier, you have opportunity for board input and review. So a board meeting study session and review session where board receives progress reports and provides input. Also, those are additional places where community members can learn where we are in the status and give input throughout open comment. Next slide. So additional input sessions, this is for all members of our community, internal and external. We have community forums scheduled on 3 different dates. And we have reviews of plans scheduled currently for October 16th through the 20th. There's surveys as well. So the way I look at, as we look at that large schedule of engagement and we look at opportunities, if we start to see when we start this process that we are lacking attendance, I will pivot and I will push into meetings that are already scheduled throughout the district and throughout the communities to really gather input to bring back, to make sure that we have a voice from all that we serve. There also will be an extensive marketing campaign. Here's a couple of the flyers that are going out, as well as an area dedicated on our website. So now it's open for discussion.
Thanks, Crystal. Any board member want to lead off with any comments or questions?
So board members can be part of some of the subcommittees?
If you wish to do so, yes.
My personal preference would be that we do things as a group of 5 and not have individuals with representation without everyone. Would be my personal opinion, that if the board feels that my personal opinion is that if you feel like the currently planned engagement for us in the process is insufficient, my preference would be to put it as an agenda item at a regular meeting 1 or 2 other times, or whatever met people's wishes, rather than have individuals participating on groups where we're not together. That'd be my preference, but
I would just kind of disagree because I know as board members, we don't have individual powers, but I think it might be useful to attend some of these subcommittees because I feel like you can hear more. And I don't think we'd be like, dictating what would go on, but I think it would be useful to kind of hear the different perspectives from people. And even if it's just one board member, like to get that perspective that you kind of don't get when it's a public meeting and we're kind of constrained by the Brown Act to be open. So I'd probably feel the opposite.
Yeah, I have the same feeling as Trustee Nori, because that's how we've done it in the past in my elementary district. Is like we usually wouldn't actively participate, but we could attend committee meetings just to be an observer and kind of understand the actual discussions a little bit better, so that when we're talking about the results that we're seeing, at least someone has some of the stories that they could bring back to the table. So, yeah.
About that, Amy. So when you did that in your district, did you guys rotate in? I mean, how did you organize that? Because I like Rich's suggestion because it's more even versus, a kind of an uneven participation,
Yeah.
or somebody not really. I asked her how they actually coordinated that in her district, because I like the idea of working in a more even way. And I think sometimes it is hard for board members to just be silent observers, right?
You just don't
So how did you guys do it?
anything.
How did you do it in your district?
Well, I mean, like we discussed as a board that usually there were 2 official people that were on the committee, but I mean, we don't have to do that. But even if there were 2 official people on the committee, you could still observe it if you want. So that kind of happened with the strategic planning, like with facilities. There were a couple of different things where people were just wanting to hear the actual discussion and inputs that people were deliberating on. But then, yeah, you had to like sit on the side and just watch. So you were not supposed to actively engage unless you were the 2 designated board members that were part of that committee. But if we choose not to have any board members part of committees, I don't think it hurts to be a silent observer. It's just like when they have community forums, usually we can attend as observers too, because we want to actually hear some of the stories that people are bringing to the table.
I actually like that idea. I think, I think we all have our own curiosities, and to be in the community with people without conversation is actually very helpful. I feel that there's something always missing around the community engagement, and that allows us to feel it for ourselves of what that looks like. It's not a trust issue. It's just more of a, we all learn differently, work differently. And also I think the messages we've been receiving all year long about being present in the community as board members, this gives us the opportunity to do that, as long as there's an agreement about how we are to engage in those situations, so that we're not overrepresenting or representing ourselves too much, those kinds of things. And I think it's important.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd quickly add is one of the reasons I want to, especially the one I'm interested in, which is kind of the instructional focus team, because at least I've kind of felt that it's very hard to kind of understand how some decisions get made in this district. And I think a lot of other people in the community can sometimes feel that way too. So I'd be curious just to see stuff, not necessarily just after it's all wrapped up and brought to the board, but kind of when it's in its early stages and it's actually being created. So that's kind of the reason why I was interested in some of these, especially the instructional focus team.
what I heard is 3 board members saying they want to have board members present, 2 against, so that's 3 saying be present, but that you don't speak. So you go and you listen, but you don't speak. Is that what I heard? Or is that not what I heard?
I was like being careful how you assert yourself, because I don't think like not saying anything would be weird, but
I think not speaking, just saying we're observers is helpful. And any questions that we have directly, whoever the co-facilitators are, we go there or we talk to Crystal. But I don't think we should be influencing the process while we're there, because it is a power shift, right? So if Rich comes to the meeting, he's the board president, everybody's gonna be like, what the board president gonna say, right? You have to be able to say, I'm a neutral person, and I think that would be helpful.
Roy, I was curious if you could give the board some information on what some of these engagement sessions would look like. Oh, you are muted. There we go.
Can you hear me, please?
We can hear you now. Thank you.
Okay, great. First, I want to thank you for the chance to listen in and also maybe share some experiences with you also. Most of the points I would like to make you've made already. There's tremendous power in having your voice be part of the shaping of the plan. In fact, we just ended up with a district that I wouldn't name. And despite my my reluctance initially, the superintendent and the board were not involved. And that was the first time it's happened. And what happens in that case is that when you come out with a product, it hasn't been influenced by the things that you know, because you have a lot of knowledge also that you can bring to the conversation. So you end up, well, in this case, they end up rewriting the work that's been done by the committee. Our preference, 99 times out of 100, would be for at least one of you to be on each one of those planning teams as a participant. We actually don't encourage observers, that if you're in a room, you're there to bring your perspective. No decisions, the final decision will always come back to the board, but it will be very helpful to have what goes on each one of those teams be influenced by what you think, the same way listening to what the members say is influencing your thinking. So it's a very level playing field during the planning process. And so our recommendation would be one or two of you on each one of those core teams, the core planning team, the instructional focus team, the alignment team, the three main ones that meet multiple times with the same group. And we also take all those teams along at the same time. So we get a lot of cross-pollination that can go on if we have at least one of you serving on the main teams. And then we'll be meeting with you as a board, but you can also be a member of any one of those planning teams. That it makes it much more powerful. You influence them and they influence you.
Thank you.
What are the list of planning teams again? What slide is that on? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, ask that again, please.
I was trying to figure out which slide, with just the list.
Maybe the agenda might be a good one.
You're like the calendar.
That's where I got it from.
It's the calendar? Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm in the calendar, not the agenda.
So the calendar has the list of the planning teams.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It does.
Thank you.
Well, it seems that's wasn't what I was expecting, but okay. So it sounds like we should maybe have some sort of process, figure out who can make which dates, and maybe not right now in the board meeting, but try to sign up people to different committees and develop a calendar.
We'll develop a calendar, and you can send areas of interest, and we'll create a poll and you can sign up.
And how?
Can I say one more thing, please?
Yes.
There was a suggestion, I think it was made by Ms. Du Bois. We've never run this before, but I can actually see that working also whereby, or maybe it was Ms. Koo that made the suggestion, is for if you want to get a feel for multiple teams, you can structure the calendar such that you're popping in at different meetings. The advantage of that is that you get to get a feel for all the teams. The disadvantage is that you don't get to follow the story all the way through. That's why I would prefer that you stay on one team, because it's an evolving story over multiple sessions. But that's actually, I hadn't heard that before. I could see that working also if it fits your context better.
I have a few other questions, if anyone else doesn't have any. I did have a question. I'm always a little concerned. I know we've talked about this as a board around our community engagement, specifically with voices at our table. I like the idea of pushing in, but I also think there's something about people being in the room sharing their stories, because that does it's different when someone bring the voice back versus the voices being at the table. And so I'm really, it's an area of struggle for us to ensure that the different populations that are at the table. I looked at Ravenswood, I looked at Palo Alto Unified School District when they did their strategic plan. I've done a strategic plan with another nonprofit that I work with over, 10,000 families. And so I know it's a daunting process. And when those individuals aren't at the table, we tend to make decisions based off the data that we have, which is not always completely accurate. And so I'm just wondering, how are we, I'm not, is it Mr. Matui? Is that what I said?
Yes, you are.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's it. Okay. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm wondering, how are we gonna really have an intentional, like strategic plan to get certain voices out? Because I am very do we need to have a certain percentage? Maybe you can tell me when you've done that. What is a good number, given our population, our diverse population? If I look at our statistics and who our district is, there's a high percentage of Spanish-speaking families, and we haven't been able to get all those families out. I know we have the DLAC, but that still is a small group of folks. I also wonder about the recruitment piece of it. How are we going to use our partners? And so I know it's a hard job, but I also believe that if we don't have it at the table, we're going to be making decisions not with the voices at the table. So how do you, because I'm thinking of special education, they're not often the families that we pull. I'm also thinking about the Gateway students who are placed at Gateway. I'm thinking about middle college. I'm thinking about our adult school, particularly because of importance, because usually them are individuals who didn't finish high school with us, but finished it with the adult school. And I'm also thinking about our mental health providers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a really key word that you used a couple minutes ago is intentional. And without that, we're gonna have just the same group doing most of the talking. So we have to be very intentional about reaching out to those groups. The way we have the teams designed, the core planning team, for example, should be at least 15 to 20%, parents and families. So that's the most broadly representative of all the groups. The instruction focus team is just school folks. Then the alignment team suggests the same intentional diversity. Then we have to go beyond waiting for them to come to us, to the usual forums we have, and figure out how do we meet them where they are. And we are not averse to, going to a church, because we can get 20, 30 folks to, participate on a given Sunday, doing something within the community, in addition to the more traditional ones where we gather them at a district facility. So we have to be intentional, and we have to have a multi-pronged approach. I'm very comfortable with the idea of setting quotas in the sense of making sure we have representation of all the key communities of interest. But if we don't bring that intentionality to it, I can tell you now which groups will be marginalized because their voices are not at the table.
Yeah. So you said 15 to 20% of parents total. And I know when I've done other work, I know we try to go above and beyond for those voices who aren't at the table just to cast a little bit more.
Correct. And parents, for example, will have multiple opportunities to participate. Certainly the core planning team. The community forum is mostly parents. And I will go out of my way to find parent leaders or parent group representatives on the alignment team as well. So we have them on, those are the three most important team for parents: core planning team, alignment team, and then the community forums.
All right, so that's good to hear. I do know that there are some lay promontories and outreach programs that specifically get to our community. I know Innovate Parents, I know El Concilio and Nuestra Casa and Anamatangi have these grassroots folks to really get families to complete the application or do specifically the surveys and the forums. Coming off the poverty forum that we, ending the poverty forum, one of the things that talked about is that basically what families are saying is at the end of the day, I don't have enough money. They're working 2 jobs. So if we're going to ask families to give up work to be involved on a community forum, because they really want to be there, because their absence is not necessarily a reflection of their commitment. It's a reflection of reality. So there has to be some other incentives or possibilities. I know I looked at Ravenswood. I think just sent something out about Reimagine Ravenswood, and they're doing some gift cards and some other things to at least show appreciation, or a raffle or something to ensure that those families come out, in addition to things like childcare and stuff like that. So I'm just wondering, given that population and what they're really financially giving up to be involved, how are we going to engage those families? We can have that discussion later, or we can have it now, but I think it should be part of the structure. And then the last thing is that I wanted to talk about is how I'm looking at Bonnie, because I know you have the LCAP program. I'm also thinking about people being over-surveyed. Right now, the county is doing a Measure K listening forum and survey. There's one for the San Mateo County Health assessment process. I just came off of a different community assessments. So families are being tapped into a lot around these surveys. And so I want them to know that their voice is heard, but they might be a little tapped out. So I'm looking at Bonnie, we have the LCAP. And so I'm just wondering, are we going to ducktail this? I'm thinking about the survey, not necessarily the forums, but the surveys. Are we going to ducktail them so that we get one survey versus like 3 or 4?
Yeah, we talked about this with Performance Fact and then with the principals this week. And what we're going to do, excuse me, it's pretty early in the year to be surveying, for instance, freshman families about their experience in our district, or employees who are new to the district. And we really would like to get this done in a timely enough manner to really inform our LCAP for the next 3 years. And so what we talked about and what made sense to us and to Mutiu and his team was we did our survey of our families and our staff and our students last February. So that data is still pretty fresh. So the thought was that we would use that data for this strategic plan, and that we would wait on our survey, the panorama survey, and do it in the spring with the Healthy Kids survey, and try and help with the survey fatigue in that way.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Because I was like, oh my gosh, how many they're going to fill out. And then, Crystal, you talked about that equity inclusion is at the core. What do you mean by that?
I think that's about representation, making sure that we have our representation throughout the district and our communities, as you had mentioned.
Okay. I guess I'm trying to think, I'm trying to envision this. I'm excited about this. I think it gives us a reset as a board. I see it. I'm looking at Carrie as you think this is a time where this could be a possible activity that brings people together and moves towards healing, because we're focused on something that's really productive. I also think it allows us not to be willy-nilly about our goals, because we have a vision. So there's a lot riding on this. And so I have some questions about how can we make sure people are represented well, and that it's facilitated well. I just keep remembering EPAA and you guys doing so much and no one showed up. So I'm like, in my mind, that was a big, flop, not necessarily performance wise, but just like that was a big flop for me. And so, and that hurt, like, oh my gosh, people didn't show up. So it's really at the top of my mind, because I know that we have historically tried, but really have not been able to get out some of the populations that we try to make decisions around using data. So just want to put that out there. Thank you.
I think that, with the LCAP, that's, I don't think people really like sit around the dinner table and talk about the LCAP, right? And so people show up when they, are connected to the topic and have information to share. And so that's why I think that it's important when we have these opportunities, if we're not seeing the engagement, we have families that are connected within our community, like Mathieu said, and Bonnie had also mentioned, that we then go to them and we become a part of their agenda instead of them becoming a part of our agenda. That changes it because they're still going to be participating in the event that they're participating in, right? And so here's another event we're asking you to do. But if you look at engagement just throughout districts, we do have engagement. It's unfortunate that we want to hear from our families and our community partners before a situation arises, right? Like we want to form those relationships that really drive the direction and influence the direction of the district. So that's what we are trying to do.
Kind of adding on to that, I had a couple of things that I thought about while you were having that conversation. So I don't think it's just one community that, might be kind of underrepresented when it comes to these surveys. I think it's hard to motivate almost anyone to really care about a lot of this stuff because they might not be able to tangibly see, like, even when I think of like strategic plan, it's very hard to see how that might affect me. So what I kind of thought of is, why don't we make this more like issue focused? I think people can connect to certain issues a lot more and might motivate them to get involved in it with some vague idea of, oh, we're brainstorming a strategic plan. Because I can just think of some issues off the top of my head that, you might get a lot of people who would be interested in sharing their opinion versus like a broad thing of a strategic plan. So I don't know if you ever thought about that, like kind of focusing it more on like, oh, we have this idea or we want to change X and seeing what you think versus just making it more general.
I think that's a great question for Mathieu and strategy.
Actually, that's quite brilliant, actually. Especially if we can identify, it's like what I read into what your suggestion and slightly tongue in cheek is, what's the right bait to get people to come in? And if we can identify some of those things that they will either be really excited to be part of, or they're already worked up about, and say that's going to be the focus, that will bring them in. That could bring them in. I think it's a brilliant idea if we can work. If we can identify those 2 or 3 or 4 themes or issues or topics that we want to rally around, and make sure you include some of the edgy ones that perhaps we're not very comfortable with.
I actually have a difference of opinion. I think I've been a part of school strategic plans where the school has had ideas and then it just felt like a feedback session on what you have already agreed to. Mm-hmm. And so when you think of civic participation, am I just giving feedback off of your ideas? Is this just the persuasive thing? Or is this actually, I'm designing this with you, meaning that I have buy-in and I'm making a difference within the group. And so in my mind, when I'm thinking of this strategic plan, we have different camps of families with different experiences coming from multiple partner school districts. We have a vast diversity of families. And I'm not just talking about race, but I'm also talking about experiences and knowledge and engagement and all that. And so when you're thinking of that level of vastness, and if I'm thinking of this as a way of bringing community together, if we come with too many ideas and issues that we have identified, not they have identified, because we want to hear from the community about what their concerns, what their direction, what they're excited about, and really rally them around the things that they're interested in. But if we're doing that, that's over-representation of certain communities. And so of us representing our communities. And so I struggle with that a little bit more because I think we need to have more conversations as a community. And this is a way to kind of facilitate that on a neutral ground.
I think, I'm sorry.
Trustees, if you have any thoughts or comments that you've heard some discussion from us, it's a chance to hear from you if you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, I think I agree with what Trustee Nori was saying earlier because I know, especially for student feedback, that's really hard to get and very valuable to what the district is doing. So I think that, making it a little more issue focused and kind of friendly to students would be a great way to get those responses. I know that a lot of my friends and people at the schools don't really take surveys that seriously. And while they can be a great method of data collection, we should also be thinking about who that's going to and how they're really going to respond to that. And I think the majority of students aren't really going to care or even take the survey.
I agree with Trustee Agarwal. I think obviously we don't have the voice of the Student Advisory Committee behind us yet, but just from observation of my own peers, most students don't really take those surveys, and the ones that do, there's a clear correlation between, let's say, GPA and the ones that take the surveys, and as a result, the people that usually have some of the higher GPAs aren't really the people that the district needs to strive to help. So I think making surveys more focused in order to get to the communities of students that we aren't reaching through surveys may be a good idea for it to work.
Mutiu, I think you were going to say something.
Yeah, I was going to say that I see it as a complement, not a replacement for everything else we've talked about. We will still have those planning teams. And my guess is if I were to ask us now to identify 3 or 4 big themes that could work across almost all of our schools, we won't be too far off. We'll have, perhaps safety and school climate, maybe engagement, maybe support for struggling students and so on. So if anything that can bring folks in to give us another insight into the big picture will be really helpful to the whole process. So I see it as a complement, not a replacement for everything else we've already said we're going to do to get more folks on board. That's what I find attractive about the, I won't call it issues, I call it themes, maybe just different themes that you already are aware of, and then organize basically an interest-driven campaign to gather information.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think the interest-driven campaign would attract a lot more student voice. I also think that maybe if surveys aren't the most effective, data collection tool from students, if the board is going to be involved in these committees in the creation of the strategic plan, you guys can come and speak at the school sites and just kind of reach out directly to students. I think sometimes digital communication just gets lost, especially for things like this. So if you were going to be involved in that way, I think that would really make an impact.
Also, this isn't relevant to the exact question we're discussing, but just from remembering when I was taking those surveys, the school district seems to use a 7-point Likert scale, and a lot of the times my peers simply just pick the neutral option every single time. So possibly changing that from a 7-point scale to like a 6-point scale, which forces students to have an actual opinion, would also help.
Yeah, 4-point scale would be even better.
Okay, Crystal, what do you recommend for next steps?
Oh,
I have no scientific background on points on
I wasn't
scales.
talking
Okay.
specifically about
Okay,
that, just in
good.
terms of a
I can
strategic
learn.
plan process.
Amy,
Go ahead,
Amy, you want to have a quick comment?
Yeah. I was actually going to agree with the student trustees. So I think in my experience, sometimes just going to the school and saying, hey, let's meet over the lunchtime and just, maybe even mark something down on paper, right? Write your comment here, or those types of things are a little bit more engaging. And because you're at the school site and people see what you're doing, or you're just talking to students, sometimes you get more real stories that way. But the other question I had was also, what in general is the communication plan for all of these activities? Because it's not just recruiting people to participate, but it's also kind of like that big kickoff. So if we have like a board meeting where we're reviewing the plan of attack, if you want to attack the strategic plan, then one of it could be, hey, this is our kickoff to the broader community, then, updates on our progress, that type of thing, so that people are brought along in the journey. Because you don't want to be rolling out the strategic plan and that's the first time people have heard about it, or you don't want to be sending out a survey. It's like, what's this? Because I haven't heard about it before.
So, I think that I need direction on if we want to have a kickoff on September 6th.
What is the kickoff?
What Amy described. So the way I understand it is basically a formal announcement in the board meeting of a strategic plan. A little bit about the process. I kind of feel it's a little bit about what we shared today. But is there a board's desire to provide some input? You, again, to remind you all, you have a dedicated study session currently for your input as a board to the actual plan.
I have a question. The last slide looked to be like, the last of your slides looked to be like promotional materials.
Those are some promotional materials.
Maybe what I heard from Amy's comments is an understanding of what promotional.
Well,
Obviously,
there's
promotional materials when we're
Yes.
like, when and how we're.
So there has to be recruitment. If we wait for people to sign up, we won't get it. We have to go out and seek people. In addition to those specific groups, you have your large community forums, right? So like I am contemplating a mailer to certain households. Like I look at it very similar to how we run a bond campaign, right? Getting it out there, getting it into papers, getting it into our feeder districts. Those are going to be our students, and pushing out very similar to how Belmont Redwood Shores had contacted me to participate in their strategic plan in a part of that process. Again, because of this timeline, it's condensed. It's condensed greatly. But no, we will always, we will always have people that don't know what we are doing. But I want to make sure that we have as few as possible that don't know we're going through a strategic plan.
Kind of wondering, why didn't we make it like school-based? Like when you have those community forums, why don't we kind of have it like based at, or have forums at individual school sites? Because I think that's another thing. Like I think it's a lot harder for people to really think about a strategic plan for their entire district. When they see it kind of related to the school where their kids go to, they might have more buy-in, like seeing how it affects their school personally. So I'm just curious why there was a decision to make it district-wide instead of having meetings at individual school sites.
Matui, do you want to answer that?
We could work it either way. I think we have 3 scheduled now. But if you want to go 7 and we can schedule them, it'll be fine with us.
Mm-hmm.
We moved away from having them at individual school sites for at least the LCAP because we were trying to send the message that it's a district-wide plan, so that there would be, I hear what you're saying about people being more interested when it's about the school their student attends, but we were hoping for the cross-pollination of this is what happens at my school, this is what happens at your school, sending the message we're doing a plan for the whole district, not for your individual school site. So I hear the plus to what you're saying about it being more intoxicating, an opportunity when it's the school your kid attends, but sometimes the payoff is, one, people didn't feel like we listened to them because when it comes to the big plan, they don't see the specifics of their site. And 2, it takes away from this is a plan for all of us.
I guess one thing I'd add to that, because right now for the community forums, it just says on site, but it doesn't actually say where. And if you look at the geography of our district, it's really big. So I think we need to also consider how easy is it going to be for people to get to that location, and we spread them out evenly across the district. So it's easy access.
Yeah, if you want to keep it the whole district, it might be worth it to have like maybe have one at MA and have one at Carlmont instead of maybe having them all here, so it'd be easier for people.
kind of just, as I'm listening to this, it just feels like there's so much direction. It's becoming a little bit confusing. And I'm wondering if we should trust this process a little more as a group. We've hired a professional. He's done other strategic plans. And I wonder if we should just trust a little more. I mean, I think there are points where we need to give some input. So I'm excited about the study session that you have with the board. I'm hoping that doesn't happen at a board meeting, but it maybe, where we have where it's a more casual conversation where we could really sort of bounce off ideas and have a deeper conversation with each other. But maybe we should just trust this process a little more. It just seems confusing the way the conversation is going as I'm listening to this.
Yeah, because I think we need to restate what everybody said because it was a whole lot. Maybe Rich, you can do that.
Because I think that's part of the reason for a kickoff too, right? Is almost like taking some of the inputs from today. And if we really want to be aligned, then we kind of clarify the information. And this is kind of incorporating some of the feedback or not at the September 6th meeting. And then also, I think by that time, we should have progress on our recruitment. So just to understand, like, are all of our teams fully staffed up? Or are we missing certain things, or, are we in good shape to start executing on this calendar? So that's kind of what I was thinking on September 6th, because we're coming up with a lot of our inputs. And I think we just want to make sure we're all agreed and moving forward in the same path, and kind of know the status of all of these committees that we're trying to put in together.
So tempting. We had a discussion about participation by board members, and what was new to me was that we will do that, and that'll be a calendar that we'll be working on, offline from the board meeting, of who's going to attend which of the various sessions, whether we're going to. And to answer your question, Shawnee, should we not be able to do it remotely, then maybe at the next board meeting we can discuss and conclude where we have. To the extent it doesn't all line up, we can discuss and decide as a group how to do that. And that's the engagement process, which the three of you are interested in. In terms of a kickoff process, what I was hearing from Amy was one of communicating to the community to make sure that people knew broadly that a plan was happening. And it sounds like, as Crystal shared, that was part of her plan, just like we did with the bond, that there will be communication to, in her words, I think she said, to have as few people not know what we're doing as we can, recognizing that we will never reach everyone, but trying to do a broader outreach through, and she named a number of things. So I think that addressed what you were considering a kickoff, as I heard kickoff. And then, so what I'm hearing then would be that we have an agenda item for our next regular meeting with simply an update of how is the filling out of the committees going, which would include, if we are undecided in how we are going to be filling our parts of the committee, but then just how the recruitment's going in general. So I guess those would be the three things that I heard. Did anybody want to say if there's something that you feel I didn't capture?
Yeah, the other thing I heard is whether or not it's going to be issue focused or if it's going to be more of a general.
Okay, so that one I think wasn't one to come back, but what I heard from Matu is he was considering a both and, so that he would have the general sessions and he would consider whether specifically, perhaps as a student trustee says, for student focused things, maybe having indicating to the students there's a focus of getting their engagement on a particular issue rather than just a general survey, that the student trustees felt that might be, particularly with students, more successful in getting their engagement. I think there's some amount of acknowledgement that maybe similarly for some parent groups, there might be more engagement if there was at least mention of an issue or two that would be covered, as opposed to just generally strategic plan. And I would put that into maybe the marketing of the events. Matui was going to potentially include a few key issues in the discussion, and that could be part of the marketing to help encourage attendance. Let me know if I said anything that anyone thinks they didn't hear.
I think you did it.
Good job.
Okay, Crystal.
You will all sign on a dotted line, the minutes. Are we good? Thank you, Matui.
Thank you all.
This
Appreciate
is
it.
A very exciting process,
you.
very, very important process that we are embarking on. So
One
it's
question,
exciting.
does he have staff that speak Spanish?
We will make sure that we have, yes, all.
Not necessarily
translators.
just translation, but someone who can actually facilitate in Spanish.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you,
Thank you all.
Matui. We'll be seeing a lot of you in the coming months.
Yes, I'm looking forward to it. It's only a 45-minute drive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all.
Okay, just a quick show of hands. You guys want to take a break? Or are you good to keep going? Just checking. Everybody wants to keep going. All right, so 14.2 presentation of Sequoia Union High School District initial sunshine proposal for the 2023-2024 negotiations with the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, known as AFSCME.
All righty, well, good evening, President again, Superintendent Leach, members of the board, and our lovely community members and staff out here. My name is Todd Beal, Assistant Superintendent of Human Resources. I'm here to present the District Sunshine Proposal for negotiation with AFSCME. Last year, the end of the year, AFSCME had presented their proposal for the Sunshine Agreement. We were waiting for the final agreement to be completed. Our director, Freedom Siam, had been working with AFSCME to finalize that full agreement. Again, great cooperation with the AFSCME group. They did a lot of work, and now that it's completed, we have a full, nice, clean contract. We're able to review it and then look at the items that would be of interest for the district to negotiate. So that's what I'm here today, is to go over through what that Sunshine Agreement is. And so for the 2023-2024 school year, the first one is Article 4, Hours of Employment. The district wishes to update language related to a method for daily check-in and check-out at each site. Article 5 is transfers. The district has an interest in revising language pertaining to employee voluntary transfers. Article 6 is health and welfare. The district remains committed to providing full health and welfare benefit coverage to its employees and the families. The district recognizes the cost of health and welfare benefits as an integral part of the total compensation package to be considered in conjunction with salary. The district has an interest in negotiating a health and welfare benefit package that is commensurate to that of comparable local districts while maintaining the fiscal stability of our district. Article 7 is leaves. The district wishes to clarify attendance reporting procedures. Article 9 is safety. The district has an interest in negotiating work uniform requirements for additional employee classifications and to provide additional reimbursement amounts for non-slip shoes for specific employee classifications. Article 10 is grievance. The district has an interest in negotiating the revisions of the grievance article as it pertains to arbitration. Article 11 is discipline. The district has an interest in negotiating language pertaining to employee discipline and attendance. Article 13 is wages. The district wishes to maintain a total compensation package, including all economic items that is commensurate to that of comparable local districts while maintaining the fiscal stability of our district. Additionally, the district has an interest in defining which employees qualify to receive a bilingual stipend. And final, Article 19, Terms of Agreement. This is to update the conclusions of negotiations to reflect the applicable changes.
Okay,
All right,
thank you. Todd, does any board member have any comment or question?
All right, thank you.
Okay, the next item is a restatement of resolution number 1745, the governing board of Sequoia Union High School District position in favor of equitable representation of student trustees to motion to vote. I take it upon review is determined that we should restate.
Yes, it's very important that our new two trustees understand the power that they come with when they sit at the dais with us. And so we thought that putting a restatement, easy accessible for you guys to see the resolution that the board approved last year about encouraging you to offer your comments and to provide votes and motions on certain agenda items.
So if you were able, if you had a chance, or if you don't read, haven't already, read that resolution. There's a limited number of things that you cannot make motions on, and everything else you can. So we will be encouraging your participation in making motions, which will go in the official minutes on when we do have action items, which we don't have tonight, but when we do have action items for you to make motions. Appreciate your participation already today. You guys have been contributing, and we want to continue having you, both of you, participate throughout the year. Any other board members want to make a comment?
Oh, I was just kind of curious, tangentially related, if we've ever, because I know this is something that I don't think it's just our district, a lot of districts kind of struggle with. Like, have you talked about ways to get the student trustees or students in general more involved in like the board and some of our decision-making processes? Because I wondered if we were trying anything new this year, or like came up with any new ideas that we had to try to, not just the student trustees, but mainly them, to get them more involved in focus or in things we do.
We do have, CSBA has some trainings that they are offering. They're not every month. When we looked at them and we looked at the topics for them, they seem to align with the general overall business that districts tend to have at that time period. So I kind of see it as like an opportunity to dive deeper into that. And then also Laura and I will be providing, review, support of the agenda. And I would encourage both of you to reach out to either Laura or I, when the agenda is published, to really understand and see what would be, of interest. And we just move forward like that.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. And we saw and read what you put out. So thank you so much. We appreciate it. And we look forward to contributing even more.
And we're not afraid to put you on the spot if we need input.
Yes, thank you so much.
And I think we're also very willing to help with any PR that you need to get students involved. So if you want us to come and speak at a school site or at one of your recruitment meetings and that kind of stuff, give people something like a story to hang their hat on and know, like, oh, if I participate in this, this is the type of impact I can make, right? So I think those types of stories and role modeling could be really helpful too.
Yeah, we definitely agree. I think something Jacob and I talked about for the SAC, which we can hammer out later, is kind of having the board be more involved and you guys, taking turns coming and speaking and working kind of more directly with the board's agenda each meeting to make sure students really feel involved and informed.
Not to put you on the spot, but what I'd be curious to also hear is if you had any goals or stuff you were interested in doing this year, because I think that's something that kind of always gets lost or like doesn't get bring up. So it'd be interesting to hear if you had any ideas or questions or things that you wanted to.
Yeah, so primarily we're focused on expanding the SAC because last year, especially towards the end, SAC participation dwindled. So we're really looking forward to and trying to increase diversity and increase the amount of perspectives we have on the SAC, and B, really focusing SAC discussions towards what the board is going to discuss in future meetings, so that the student voice can have an actual impact in your votes.
Yeah, in addition to what Jacob said, I know that we were both interested in kind of overall strengthening communication between the board and students. I know that one of our interview questions was, what does the board do? And that, threw off both Jacob and myself. So I think in addition to the SAC, we want some kind of newsletter once a month at least, because I think the majority of students have a lot of great ideas about the district, but just don't know how to get them heard. So our main concern is really taking the time to talk to students and make sure that there is kind of a very clear path for them to take action if they wish to do so.
I want to say there's I know when I first got on board, the last 3 years, the communities in which I walk mostly in, with my work that I do privately as a social worker, a lot of individuals don't know the power of their voice. And so when I started getting invited to the government classes, is when that really began to show up more. I was invited to speak at Woodside, and I was invited to speak at EPAA, and then there's another school, I can't think of it. And the students did have the same concerns of SAC, and they didn't know what SAC was. They didn't know who their representative was. They didn't know those things. And so I think it's important on how do we make it relevant to the student about how to get their voice heard and how do they make impact. Because some students, I think part of their withdrawal from school emotionally or just feeling like their voice is not heard is that we actually don't respond to their voices sometimes. They don't feel like we respond, I should say. Not that we don't. And so I know I've been mentioning your name to the students I know at Karma and the students I know at MA. And I think we need to figure out how do we get those other students, and do they get community service hours that will help? Do they, do they get credit? I'm looking at Bonnie, I don't know. I'm just throwing stuff out. But like, do they get other supports to be able to have the incentive to be there if they're going to give up their time?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I also think kind of a more specific interest that I did have, especially in light of like events that happened at MA and the general school environment, is kind of introducing more restorative justice to the district. I think that incident kind of shed a lot of light on how we deal with discipline as a district and at MA as a school. And I feel very passionately about making sure that there's a lot of restorative practices in place in our administration, our teaching, and the way that we handle conflict in schools. So that's also something that I'm excited to explore throughout the year.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for that discussion. Next is action item, of which you have none, and then future agenda items. Any board member have anything they'd like to speak about regarding future agenda items? Okay. Then it is time for adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Motion by Shawnice. Do I have a second? Second by Carrie. All in favor of adjournment? Aye.
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 Thank you, everybody. Good night.